Welcome to the podcast. It starts with you, with me, Vic O'Farrell. I ask my guests, by understanding their own behaviours and personality style, what impact on their lives, both personally and professionally, has there been? What is it like to live and work with someone of your style? I mean, this is not about labelling people, putting people in boxes, or an excuse for bad behaviour. It's about recognising, understanding and respecting that we're all different. And what impact can you have on others by looking in the mirror? Because it starts with you. And here we are with another episode of It Starts With You. Oh, Esther, how fab to see you on this podcast. Rather than me introduce you, why don't you introduce yourself and let everybody know all about what it is that you do, but also your profile and what that means?
Well, I'm fresh off the TEDx stage. I've actually done a TEDx talk because I'm a professional speaker, but I used to be a very, very terrified public speaker. And I was so terrified, I wrote a book about it. Look at me immediately plugging my book. But the book, it won an award. It's quite a short book. It's got lots of graphics in it. It's actually very handy if you are a little bit afraid of speaking. So that's my specialty now. I help people speak. I help people with their confidence, pitching, presentations. But back in the day, I was a broadcaster. I was a senior producer at the BBC and I've worked in television and radio. So for many, many, many years, I was really confident behind the scenes, being invisible. I call it being invisibly brilliant. And I was the one holding up the idiot board saying, go on, you're going to be great, darling, wonderful. And I've interviewed Hollywood stars like George Clooney, Madonna. I've interviewed Oasis. Well, you can only interview them for very short periods of time. They might kind of be a bit rude back, but that's my background. But I really didn't get into the spotlight until quite recently when I set up my own business. But when we first got on this call, you said, what's your style? You said, what's your profile? And I thought, oh, do you mean my Myers-Briggs coordinates? So I started answering you saying, what's my style? I'm an ENTJ. So I'm an extrovert. Why? What's yours?
I'm also an extrovert.
Well, this will get very interesting then, won't it? Yeah, I'm definitely extrovert, big picture, terrible on detail. I think we share that style.
Yeah, we do. So my Myers-Briggs, your class ENFJ, I believe I am. But as you know, I just practice in the disc system or the colours, so I'm very yellow red. It's very outgoing. So we're very, very, very similar. And I guess really, I know what impact it's had on me. I love the fact that you say, you were invisibly brilliant. Behind the scenes, you had all this confidence, all that extrovertness behind the scenes was amazing. But the minute you stood in front of the camera or on stage in the spotlight, you became more introverted, more, what am I doing here? So how was understanding you and understanding the stage and being in the spotlight, how has it helped you with your business that you now have?
I mean, if you go on a stage and you speak to a room full of people, it is a game changer to your career. And all the people I work with, leaders, women leaders, particularly people that may have in the past been afraid to get their voice heard, people from a diverse background, for example, or a different socioeconomic background that don't feel they went to a good school, they might feel they're a bit dumb or they sound a bit stupid. They're the people that tend not to put themselves out there in the firing line. And I used to feel that I just wasn't good enough. I just felt like I wasn't articulate enough. I'm a semi-dyslexic. I couldn't really read aloud. I can't read a script. I can't sight read a script. All the words start mushing up in front of me. And I just felt like I wasn't really clever and I wasn't like one of those really confident sounding men with gravitas. So I just ruled myself out as a public speaker. So it's completely changed my business, being able to speak and being able to show people that when they can stand up and get their voice heard without changing their personality, that's where you can really start making a difference and you can be seen as a thought leader. You're seen as a leader when people physically see you standing there being visible. So that's what I try and convince people to do a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, glossophobia, and that's even the title of your book, isn't it? Which is the fear of public speaking, which I didn't realize was is greater than the fear of death. So people are probably
Yes.
listening going, well, yeah, but you're extroverted. Extroverts always like to be out there showing up and doing stuff when you've just proved that that's not the case. So how does somebody who's introverted, maybe confidently introverted, but feel that they don't have a voice, how can they be the better person to speak professionally and stand up on stage with confidence?
Well, I've got some news for you. In my experience, introverts are really good at public speaking, and quite often you find that introverts are really good at performance, really good at acting. They're musicians, they're rock stars. For example, Oprah Winfrey, introvert, Madonna, introvert. People who are really good on stage aren't necessarily extrovert. Introverts tend to be very good at being very kind of focused, and they like to prepare, and they've got an inner confidence, and they quite like not being interrupted. So a stage doesn't necessarily freak them out. Whereas an extrovert, in my experience, and after interviewing many experts and psychologists as well, and experimenting on myself, extroverts expect there to be some kind of rapport, because extroverts get their energy and feed from other people. We feed from almost, we need that kind of nodding head, that kind of seal of approval. We like to have a two-way conversation. And so standing on a stage with a bunch of people just sitting blank-faced, judging, really freaks us out. And it just goes back to the tribal instinct, which is, I am outside the community. I might die. They're throwing me to the wolves. And I think that's just a natural biological reaction. And then I realized, oh gosh, this is really interesting, because in the workplace, and a lot of my clients are working in different sectors, financial services, professional services, in meetings, that's where extroverts can dominate, and we can be really confident, and they can interrupt people and like really enthusiastic. And the introverts are sitting there thinking, and they're not listening to me. When's my turn? And quite often introverts will miss out on opportunities in a kind of banter scenario, in a meeting scenario, because they don't want to interrupt. They don't like being interrupted. So actually, the good news is, if you're an introvert, you really need to be doing something like being on stage or podcasts, recordings. You need to be showing your talent uninterrupted. And there are many other tips of how to handle yourself when you're with in a boardroom full of extroverts. But for extroverts, you really do need to put yourself through the pain of realizing that you can do it. But for example, my style of public speaking isn't really like a soliloquy. I don't really like just doing a monologue. I like to speak on a stage, but then have some kind of connection, regular connection with the audience. So I kind of have a conversation when I'm speaking, and that's how I like, that's what I thrive on, is having that kind of feedback. And if I don't get the feedback, I create the questions and answers myself. I kind of imagine that people are asking those questions. So it's about being able to play to your strengths, really. What
Yeah.
about you? When you're speaking on a stage, you kind of ask yourself questions like, you might be thinking, why do you do that? Do you do that?
Yeah, it's that whole thing of like, you say to the audience, do you talk to yourself? And we're all sitting there going, I don't know, do I talk to myself? Yeah, you do talk to yourself. But like you say, it's the thriving off of the audience. So I'm like you. So I can't do a 45-minute keynote without at least asking the audience at least one thing to get that interaction. It's like that you need that not confidence, but it's like you need that commitment from them that they're actually listening to you. Because like you say, if they, it's like you sit in the audience and you're like, yeah, 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 might be making notes. Worst thing now is obviously the phone, because you just look out and you think everyone's on the bloody phone, and they're not actually on their phone, they're just making notes on their phone. So you have
Yeah.
to ask a question so that you know that you've got their attention and that they're committed, so that you can carry on. Because as extroverts, that's exactly what we like. But like you say, introverts, they don't want that. They want the interrupted. But when I just bring you back to what you said about being in a meeting, like in a boardroom of some kind. So how can
Mm.
you're absolutely right. Extroverts will like that. And the introverts are sitting there going, and my time, when is my time? So as extroverts, we need to learn. And when I'm delivering like masterclasses and stuff, it's very good to say to, so Esther, that's lovely. Thank you for that point, Esther. But I'd like to bring Vicky in here. Vicky, you showed some interest there. Could you speak? So it's inviting the introverts. It's telling them that they now have permission to speak. But if you don't have someone that's like you or me, or you don't have anybody that's facilitating the meeting that understands personalities, what piece of advice would you give to introverts that they don't need permission to speak, that they can just speak?
Well, there's various levels of being able to get yourself airtime. And as a former broadcaster and a BBC person, airtime is, that's really valuable. And I also know that you don't need very much airtime to make a huge difference and to make an impact as a leader. There's various strategies. So one really good strategy is that you get friendly with the chairperson or the facilitator of the meeting, and you say to them, oh, I've got a couple of ideas on this point, so come to me in the meeting. And you kind of have a couple of champions or allies in the meeting, male, female, whatever, but you've got allies that know that you've got ideas and you've already tipped them off before the meeting. Because what introverts tend to do is think things through before they speak, which is a very good tip, something that I really ought to apply to myself. But I often find myself speaking and then thinking afterwards.
We
So I think
externalize,
having a
that's all.
strategy.
Yeah, we externalize our thought process, whereas introverts internalize them, which means there's going to be silence,
Yeah,
which us extroverts like to fill.
that's so funny because my husband's an extreme introvert and he's a thinker and a strategist, and he won't say anything and he'll consider and he'll think of 8 things and then he might articulate one very clever thought. Whereas I think of 8 things and then I tell you 8 things. We could do this and this, and what about this, and what about this? And one of my thoughts is genius. But the problem is I've given you 8. So the introverts around the room have kind of like got too filled up with thoughts and they don't necessarily pick out the good one. So there's pros and cons. I would say that for introverts, not judging extroverts, and for extroverts, not judging introverts. I think if we realize that there's no good, bad, right, wrong, and rather than judging, think, oh, right, okay, I get it. They're that type. So, for example, my husband would say things like, let me finish. And I think, that's so rude. And then he thinks I'm really rude. Whereas if you're an extrovert, interrupting isn't rude. It's just like, oh, yeah, I've had that. Yeah, I've seen that. And our conversation is like in the middle of the table going, rah, 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 rah. Oh, yeah. We just talk over each other. And it's like, rah, rah, rah. And there's no kind of, we don't take offense if we're finishing each other's sentences. In fact, we almost relish people finishing our sentence because it means that we've connected and we know what we're talking about and we're on the same wavelength. And introverts really don't like, they tend not to like being interrupted. It feels like they've been cut off. So I think it's about recognizing your style and coming up with a strategy. And if you're an introvert and you know that you will get some airtime, then you've probably thought through, you've really given it a good thought. What am I going to say when I get my airtime? How am I going to deliver this? And you probably will say something really poignant in a really calm, well thought through manner, and people will be listening. And it's about accepting that power, and that because that's your style. And there's no right or wrong. So when extroverts say, oh, I've been told I talk too much. Oh, I should be quiet. I should dial it down. I think to myself, well, it's a bit of a shame to dial down your bubbly personality. I think you can control it a bit more, but I don't think anyone should dial down their personality personally.
And it's more about flexing and adapting, isn't it, rather than dialing yourself down, understanding who you're with. I mean, one of the biggest things, and I know we did a little tiny bit of talk over each other about 5 minutes ago, but actually being a podcast host or even a guest is a real thing for an extrovert, because you just want to, oh my God, I just want to jump in and I just want to go, oh yeah, Esther, and this and that. And I have to sit here going, no, make a note, join when there is a gap, because there's nothing worse that someone's listening. I think it's different when people, so this is obviously going to be on YouTube as well. So if you're listening to this And actually, it'd be really interesting. Please do leave us some comments of what it means, especially perhaps if you're listening and you're an introvert. What does it mean when you're listening to a podcast when people interrupt each other and talk over it? How does it? I don't believe they're then very well listened to. Do you know what I mean? Because I can't define between the two people talking. So it's a really good practice if you're an extrovert is to go and be a podcast guest or start your own podcast and be a podcast host. Yeah.
That's a very good tip there. Yes, I would love to hear comments from introverts and extroverts about, what some of your observations as well. So what irritates you about introverts and extroverts? And I've seen some very funny TED Talks about, introverts commenting on extroverts and
Yeah.
vice versa. I've got to say,
Yeah.
I'm slightly jealous of introverts sometimes because, I've always been told, oh, you've got so much energy, you're so bubbly. And I used to think, oh, I don't know if I want to be bubbly. I want to be sophisticated. I want to be like people looking up to me and respecting me because I'm so clever. I want to be effortlessly confident. And then when I say to people, I don't really, I try and fight that bubbly kind of image. People laugh because they think, well, but you are bubbly. You are that person.
You are who you are. I think when
Pocket
you
rocket or whatever.
Yeah, when you say that about, so I've always thought not so much about being an introvert or extrovert because I didn't really realize until I started running this business. I really never knew. But in the corporate world, what I used to think is in a meeting when they used to go around and ask people for ideas, and like you say, as extroverts, we just externalize our thought process and we could do this and this and this and this and this, and then suddenly there's like 8 things. And like you say, the introvert would think about it, internalize it, probably dismiss some of the thoughts in their head, and then just come out with one genius idea. And I used to always think about, why can't I just come out with just one genius idea rather than half a dozen, splatter against the wall, all of them, and then none of them stick? And that was it. But I didn't know it was introvert extrovert. I just thought
Yeah,
genius.
to be
Not.
honest, I know exactly what you mean. I remember when I was at one of my first jobs was working at Unique Broadcasting. It was when I was a showbiz reporter for the radio. And I remember at Unique, we went on this company day and we had to do the bell bin test. And it was the 9 different types. And then you have the team bell bin curve, circle, whatever it is. And all I remember is that I was a plant. And I remember thinking, what the hell is a plant? They went, it's very rare. It's very rare. But you don't want too many plants in the team because they're a bit of an oddball. You sit in the corner and come up with the ideas. And I thought that was just a really funny way of talking about personality types. And then I've always done jobs where I've had to kind of be very resourceful. And my second highest grade on the bell bin was it resource investigator? Resource investigator. So I'm this weird plant character, followed by rustling things up. I can make something out of nothing. I used to go and interview celebs, and I'd get myself into the VIP area, and I'd manage to, work with what I'd got in front of me. And it's a very particular style. I mean, I have been called a rat up a drain pipe, a dog with a bone, like really tenacious. Isn't it funny? So you kind of you can't really control the sort of personality that you have, but you just act. You're kind of like you use your animal instincts, don't you, to understand what your purpose is. Does that sound familiar to you? Are you in the
Yeah.
corporate world though?
Yeah, I've been called the donkey from Shrek. I've been called Tigger. I get called Tigger many a times. Rein your Tigger in, Vic. It's just like everybody loves Tigger. Yeah, everybody
Yeah.
loves Tigger, but not today. I'm Rabbit today, and you're jumping all over my vegetable patch. I was like, oh, okay. But it's and like you say, I didn't really have. I did all of those tests while I was in the corporate world, but they were one of those things that you just did it because you were told to. You were going on that day. And it was great on the day, and then you'd come away and forget about it. And the biggest thing for me is, yes, I can't change who I am. We can't. We're all who we are, but it's about the self-awareness, adding that emotional intelligence so that you can flex and adapt with who you're with. Like we'll both be at National Sales Conference this year, and we won't need to because we're very similar, and we'll just be bubbling on along. People who are opposite to us going, oh, they're exhausting. And people will find us exhausting when we're
Yeah.
together. but we'll be fine. But then we'll realize that when we're with people who aren't like us, we just might soften our tone and slow our pace. It's not changing who we are. We're just being respectful to the people around us. And that's my biggest
And
thing that
also,
I've learned.
I think anything in a short burst is fine, and then leave them on their own to recharge their batteries.
Yeah.
I
You,
remember sometimes when I'm helping people with their speaking tips and things, and I'm wearing a bright jacket, and they're like, "Do we have to be like you? You know, are you saying that we have to be extrovert and wear bright clothes?" And I always say to my audiences, particularly if I'm working in data analytics or financial services or the legal sector, I say, "Look, there's a very clear message here. I am not telling you to be anything like me. I can't help the way I am. I can't help my energy levels. It's the way I'm built. It's about being yourself and being comfortable in your own skin. You've got to wear the clothes that suit you. You've got to stand the way, you know, with a good posture, but you've got to be the best version of yourself and really maximize, you know, your good bits. It's nothing to do with being like anybody else, certainly not like me. I always say if there were too many people like me, it would be exhausting.
yeah.
You don't want more than one of me in the meeting at the same time, really, because it might just get completely out of hand. And I do know my strengths and weaknesses. And one of my strengths is enthusiasm, motivation, ideas, forward thinking, vision, you know, and I love new things. I'm curious. But that can also be, you know, quite annoying for the people that really want to analyze and come up with some kind of really sensible process or plan. Because I'm like, what about this? What about this? Let's do something new. They're like, well, hang on a minute. Let's just hone what we've got. Let's consider things. Let's make a really good step. Let's take a step back and make a strategy. But you need in business, but you don't need everyone to be coming up with a million ideas. I think in the past I've been, you might be able to relate to this. I mean, I have been I've lost my confidence in the past because I've been kind of told to rein it in or dial it down. And I remember one old boss once said to me, "Oh, the trouble with you, Esther, is that you've just got too many ideas." And it was like that was a that was a downside. And that's one of my strengths. And to be told, "Oh, the trouble with you, it's a problem, like you're a problem person because you've got ideas," you know, you start thinking, "Oh, you know," and they kind of, can't you be more sensible? Can't you be more like the others?" And it's like, I can't really be sensible, really. Not really. I could try it. And so that's why you end up leaving. That's why you end up running your own business, because you can then design your daily activities and you can design your business around what you're really good at. Because I want to be good. I want people that I work with to be really good. I want them to be brilliant at speaking. When I write speeches for people, you know, I thrive off their success. And I'm good at helping people and coming up with the ideas for them. And I'm so glad that I've organized my career and my business to really maximize my good bits. And then I'm not so good at the organization, so I do get a lot of help with that. And it's not because I'm lazy, it's because I'm just not very good at it.
Well, I was going to say there. So your PA. So when we were organising this, and you just went, I can't organise diet. No, no, please speak to and there it was.
Oh, did I? I don't even remember saying that. Oh gosh, I don't
Well,
want to
you
sound like a diva.
no, 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 you weren't. You were just like, oh right, okay, diaries. Yeah, if I manage my diary, you say I double book myself because you'll say yes and then you forget to actually do the detail and put it in your diary. And then you'll book something else in and then you'll go, oh no, I've got diary clash. How do I do that? So actually, but you appreciate that that's not your specialist subject. So I give that to somebody who's very, very good at being organized and making sure things don't clash.
Yeah, and it's so much better when you've got somebody helping you and guiding you and reminding you when you're not very good at it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just changed my life actually. Getting help has changed my life. How about you? Do you get help like with coaching? I mean, I've had a few coaches and things that have really made a massive difference
Yeah.
to my work and my life.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as a coach. I would never trust a coach that doesn't have a coach. So I've had a coach for years. There have been different coaches depending on what it is that I'm actually need coaching support for. I'm in a mastermind group. But the people that help me within my business are all different. I make sure that when I'm asking anyone for help, I'll profile them and I'll just say, would you just mind doing a personality profile? Because if I had someone that was like me, yes, we'd get on great. We'd have coffees and we'd chat and we'd throw ideas around. And then I'd look behind and go, yeah, who's actually picking them up though? Who picks up all the stuff that I throw out that's a great idea? But I also need to be reined in sometimes when I go off on a tangent. Like actually, my mastermind group are very, very good for that. Because I'll be like, right, I've got this amazing idea. They were like, yeah, but on our last meeting, you were going to do this and this. Have you done that? And I'm like, oh, well, kind of. It's like, but I know that's detail
That's
stuff
so
that
funny.
I need to do to get to the next level of growing the business. And it's like, yeah, but they're great at saying, why don't you find someone else that will do that for you? And I will. Then I'll go out and go, right, who can do this? Yeah, it's.
That's a really good strategy.
I
Actually,
think whenever you,
I'm gonna steal somebody's quote.
yeah, go on.
Somebody said to me, they said, "Oh, do you like, you've got ideas, you like moving on to the next thing." And it's typical, you go to a meeting, and last time you were going to do that, this time you got new idea. And this one is a guy I know. He said, "Oh yeah, so you're a slag pie." Like a magpie always goes to the shiny thing. Is it you're a slag pie? You always go to the shiny new thing, the shiny new thing, the shiny new thing, and you forget. Oh, yes, I have got 10 other things I'm meant to be doing.
Yeah, easily distracted. That's a very, very good description for a yellow eye extrovert as well. Yeah, very much so. I mean, we could talk for ages. But I just want to, as we kind of come to the end of this show, if you could give a top tip to, let's say, an extrovert and a top tip to an introvert, what would they be?
I think if you want to be a success as a leader in that context, my top tip to an extrovert is don't rein in your personality, but do learn how to control yourself a little bit more. So, what you really want is power with your bubbly, energizing, funny personality, but you want to add some power. So, what I would say there is learn to pause a little bit more. Take a deep breath. Try not to rush in. Even 2 seconds or 1 second will completely transform your performance in any meeting or any speech. Pregnant pause there. Dramatic pause. And then my top tip for an introvert who wants to be a good leader and wants to be visible and seen and might feel uncomfortable speaking out and they're not really a show off, and I totally get that. My top tip to them is, so find yourself opportunities where you are hosting or you're introducing somebody else, or you have a small section in the management meeting or the board meeting, and make the most of those little pieces of airtime or those little stage appearances, or if you're on the panel, do say yes. Do not shy away from those opportunities to speak, because when you do speak and when you are in the spotlight, I bet you're going to think it through really well, and I bet you're going to come up with something really good. So do not say no to opportunities. Look for them and really embrace them.
Amazing.
Ta-da!
And I would absolutely agree with you in terms of the extrovert. I'll add in on the introvert bit, especially in meetings where you've got a facilitator. So say like a board meeting. Board meetings are a bit different because very respectfully in board meetings, everyone's always a hands up, waiting for the permission to speak. But do that as extroverts, a hands up is a lot, the body language is always a lot less, isn't it? So my tip would be, especially if you've got a lot of extroverts in there, is make it very obvious that you have a point. I'm not saying like you stand across a bar and wave a tenner to get the barman's attention, but make it very obvious that you have a very valid point and you are not going to stop making it obvious until you have given it.
I totally agree. Don't shy away from getting your voice heard, because the danger of not getting it heard is that you won't be recognized or rewarded when the time comes. And that's a big risk.
That is a big risk. Oh, Esther, it's been amazing. So if people want to
This
get
has
hold
been
of you,
great.
yes, if people want to get hold of you, I mean, obviously I'm going to put in the show notes all of your contact details, but what's the best way to find you?
The best way to find me is you can Google me, darling. You can search me online, Esther Stanhope, the Impact Guru. I think I'm the only Esther Stanhope if you Google my name. It used to be Lady Hester Stanhope, who was an amazing woman in the 19th century or 1911 or something. But now it's Esther Stanhope, the Impact Guru. I've got a website, I've got a blog. Please link in with me. I'd love to hear from you.
Fabulous. Thank you for being our guest on this episode, and I look forward to catching you very soon.
It's been a pleasure. Eyes and teeth.
How has this conversation had an impact on you? What have you learnt? What will you do differently? Do leave a review on Apple or Spotify on It Starts With You podcast, and also leave a comment down below. Do also then connect with me on social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook and LinkedIn. And why not even join the Facebook group It Starts With You and keep the learning ongoing. Thank you for listening.